The Honourable Annette King.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. My question's to the Prime Minister. Does he agree with the 53% of New Zealanders in last night's TV1 poll who believe they will not be better off as a result of the budget?
The Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr Speaker, what people believe is entirely up to them, but I can assure people that the GST income tax, which will make the vast bulk of New Zealanders better off, they can check out that by going to www.taxguide.govt.nz and putting it in their details. I will also note that 61% of people in that survey said that the budget would be good for the economy, and even more importantly, 94% said that they didn't want Phil Goff to be Prime Minister.
Supplementary question, Mr Speaker. Supplementary question.
Order. Now, order. Order. Provocative answers invariably lead to disorder. The answer was very good till the last unnecessary bit, but then the interjection across the House is totally unreasonable. The Honourable Annette King.
Over half that one hit.
Supplementary question, Mr Speaker. Who does he think has the best understanding of the impact of his budget, himself or our leading Christian organisations who have spoken out against his budget in the Weekly Challenge newspaper, saying that it does little to reduce queues to food banks, that GST will fall heaviest on those least able to bear it, it hasn't lessened the gap between the rich and the poor, and the cost of new houses will rise, and they have dubbed his budget the price and pay budget?
The Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr Speaker, I wouldn't agree with those comments.
The Honourable Annette King.
Supplementary question, Mr Speaker. When he said New Zealanders would be pleasantly surprised in October, will the gap between the underclass he highlighted when in opposition and other New Zealanders be closed by his tax cuts, an underclass he promised to do something about? If not, was the trip to McGeehan Close with the TV cameras in tow just a publicity stunt?
The Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr Speaker, it won't be worsened, and I believe the creation of 170,000 new jobs will help close that gap.
The Honourable Annette
Mr
King.
Speaker, when he said New Zealanders would be pleasantly surprised with their tax cut in October, had he factored in the $10 to $20 a week increase in rents, as quoted by landlords, the $5 a week power increase, the increase in telephone bills, the increase in ACC levies, the increase in doctors' fees, the increase in food items, an interest rate hike, an increase in rates, an increase in early childhood costs for parents, and in fact, won't the surprise be an unpleasant one, as Kiwis already suspect, because they're not silly?
The Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr Speaker, no. And if we just take up any of those points, actually we don't have all afternoon in the House, but Treasury's advice is that rents will go up by 1.4%. I might add, over the last 8 years of a Labor government, the average was 2.6%. And I might point out, Mr Speaker, that if one looks at the inflation rate, which is really the fundamental point that the member's making, I just refer her to Michael Cullen's response when he was asked about why it was continuously running at over 3% under a Labor government, and he simply said, New Zealand cannot be immune to these challenges, and the government certainly cannot control the price of petrol or food.
The Honourable Annette.
Question, Mr Speaker. Does he think the following low-income Aucklander who has contacted me today will get a pleasant surprise in October, given he's just received an increase in his rent of $10 a week before October because of increasing costs from the government's budget? He's been promised a $13.81 a week tax cut, and this rent increase leaves him with just $3.81 a week to cover the $9.68 increase in GST alone, without all the other costs he will face.
Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr Speaker, all I can say is if a rent has gone up now, when there's been absolutely no change at this point, that's because the landlord's choosing to do that. But I would make one point, Mr Speaker. I fondly remember before the budget, the Leader of the Opposition or the Finance spokesman, one of the two, saying they were interested in talking to this government about a capital gains tax on property. Well, that might have done a thing or two to rents.
Mr Speaker. Mr Speaker, I seek leave to table the front page of the Weekly Challenge newspaper, not a well-known newspaper around New Zealand, but it is the Christian newspaper, and I think it does fit into your category of being not one that's widely distributed.
Order. Leave is sought to table that document. Is there any objection? There is objection. Question number 5.
Point of order, Mr Speaker.
Point of order, the Honourable Annette.
Mr Speaker, I seek leave to table a transcript from the New Zealand Property Investors Association on breakfast television on the 26th of May, saying the rental on houses will go up between $10 and $20.
That one is a recent transcript from a recent broadcast that available to everyone. Question number 5, Nikki Wagner.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. To the Minister of Health,